The film begins with a small disclaimer. Although the plot is based on real events, it is pure fiction. Then an animal appears in the frame. Not just a sheep, but a baroness. She finds herself in a luxurious mansion on the Italian island of Sardinia, where people are watching television, personifying the typical TV viewer. Then he falls down dead. The story moves to Taranto. A young businessman, Serge, talks to a politician on a yacht about a contract for school meals. He asks for help to win the auction, but the politician does not agree. Soon Candido, a guest in a swimsuit, arrives on a boat, which she demolishes at Sergio's request. After a short time alone with her in the hut, the politician becomes more open, promising support. Then the businessman himself tested Potana for professional suitability, noticing the tattoo of the head of government of the country, Silvio Berlusconi. Sergio's father is unhappy, rightly believing that his son is promoting the family business with bribes. But the young man has already decided to move from the village to the capital, which he tells his wife Tamari about. Sergio, who calls himself a cultural manager rather than a pimp, accompanies a candidate to audition for producer Fabrizio Sala, who is looking for girls for television. Thanks to Candida's two outstanding talents, Serge manages to reach Rome. In the capital, he has a conflict of interest with Salu, who holds the position of state supplier of prostitutes and cocaine and does not intend to share it with the provincial upstart. Also at the party, Sergio meets a certain Kira, who knows Berlusconi personally. She promises to introduce the businessman to politics on the condition that he will be useful to her. Sergio is preparing to join the bohemian crowd of the Italian capital, looking for future escorts on the set of advertising. He gathers the horizontal workers for dinner to announce his plans. Party at Villa Marina in Sardinia, next door to Berlusconi's house. Kira helps him in this, whom he unsuccessfully tries to seduce. The girl admits that she is a little jealous of private people who lead a good life, like Sergio's father. After all, when her beauty fades, she will be left with nothing. A conspiracy is brewing against Berlusconi. Party comrade Santino intends to remove him from office, enlisting the support of Deputy Coupa. Tamara flirts with him to introduce her husband to important people, but Santino refuses, even sleeping with her. In response, the woman blackmails the politician, demanding money for his silence, and her telephone conversation is accidentally overheard. Walking through Rome at night with his escorts to another event, Sergio notices an escort from Berlusconi hurrying past them to a better life. They then witness incidents. Because of a rat running onto the road, a garbage truck falls from a bridge and explodes, scattering garbage around. Allergy to the inner world of partygoers craving a luxurious life. The scene cuts to Willie Morina's ecstasy party, full of young men devoid of shame, inhibitions, and clothing. Walking contentedly around the area, Sergio does not forget to look through binoculars at his neighbor's house, waiting for him to become interested in what is happening. However, the politician never showed up. The murdered guests admire the sunset before collapsing to the floor until the next morning. Berlusconi, dressed as an Oriental princess, brings his wife Veronica a bouquet of flowers, but Tuna smiles too much at her husband's jokes. During the day, he gives her a diamond ring, and she literally and figuratively jumps on a trampoline and leaves him. Without losing hope of returning his wife's love, Silvio remains in the villa. On the way, he tells his grandson that when Putin came to see him, several warships arrived with him, which could be seen directly from the villa. Confused and nonsense, the politician clearly explains to the boy that people will believe any lie if it is told convincingly. Berlusconi reviews the finished material and decides which video will be broadcast on the television company he owns. He also has his own musician, Mariano, who walks with him around the villa and plays songs written by Silvio himself on the guitar. They perform one of them for Veronica. But the wife is still cold. She was tired of her husband's countless trips to the left. A politician confronts a rising soccer star to convince him to play for Milan, a soccer club he also owns. The athlete refuses. Then his party colleague Santina comes to Silvio to ask for help in the fight against the blackmailer Tamara. However, Berlusconi is well aware of Santin's plans to hang him. He calls him Judas and warns that, if necessary, he can easily remove him from the political scene. Santana is on her knees asking for forgiveness, but the owner leaves without turning around. While relaxing on a yacht with his wife, Berlusconi watches a boat full of beautiful girls in bikinis passing nearby. Another attempt by Sergio to attract the attention of his neighbor. During dinner, Veronica does not escape the fact that her husband is staring at the bathing beauties. Later, while flying on a plane, the couple gets stuck in the middle of the sea. This allows for a heart-to-heart conversation. Both the wife suffers from boredom, and the active businessman, whose business is managed by the children of a political party and colleagues, suffers painfully from idleness. Back on the island, Veronica offers a romantic walking tour of Cambodia. The husband responds by suggesting that she see a doctor. And when she asks him if he remembers the song they first kissed, Sil says no. The performer now approaches the song and begins to perform it. Devoted Marian Astaskoy watches his competitor from afar. Berlusconi's business partner, Ennio, tells him that he made the wrong decision, which cost the company $160 million in losses. He suggests compensating for partners' losses in order to gain the trust of investors, which in the long run will lead to increased investment and offset the misstep. Silvio gives the green light, but what really bothers him is that he lost the election without the votes of 6 senators. Ennio offers to convince several politicians to vote for him. Berlusconi, bored in retirement, happily jumped at the idea of returning to the big game, where his active nature could be used. To brush up on his persuasion skills, Berlusconi calls the first number in the phone book and, posing as a broker, tries to convince a stranger to buy a new apartment. Such knowledge of psychology, skills developed over the years, allow you to gain confidence and achieve your goal. A woman is ready to sell her mother's store for the sake of her dream apartment. Inspired by the success, Berlusconi organized a reception at which he performed a song for the guests, accompanied by a guitarist. Already at night, an assistant cuts off the head of a snake crawling on the lawn, and the next day the garden is completely disinfected. Using the influence of Santino, who became involved in the conspiracy, Berlusconi realized that not all sap artists shared his optimism. Convincing senators to join requires specific proposals, not a general idea. Then Silvio invites one of the senators to his place. He, knowing full well the purpose of the visit, refused to join Berlusconi's party, accusing the politicians of having an inferiority complex. But active flywheels have already been released. Berlusconi lured the right people to his side, offering in return various favors, financial protection, nepotism for relatives and lovers. However, discussions about the choice of young lovers for the main role were intercepted by the intelligence services. The contents of these conversations were made public through publication in the newspaper. Even Silvio's lover calls him when she realizes her name appears in the article. Veronica, disappointed by this opportunity, goes on a trip to Cambodia alone. Longing for his wife, Silvio even refuses the company of the beautiful girl brought by Salo. However, soon, with the help of Kira, the aspiring politician finds himself at Sergio's party. He invites the provincial Atlas man to visit him the next day, then, in pursuit of his goals, casually informs his wife Tamari that he knows about her affair with Santino. The next day, Berlusconi makes it clear to Sergio that he has carried out his plan to attract attention by renting a nearby villa and setting up a prostitute there. Discussing the issue of returning to big politics, for which he even had to leave the current government, the owner asks the guest to organize a party. More escort girls, dress more simply, no professional prostitutes for money, and no drugs. For the opportunity to touch the glittering high society, a provincial pimp agrees to temporarily forget about his addiction to powder. He grabs this chance with his teeth, recruiting frivolous girls into the agorda, ready at the first call to stand on their feet in front of the powerful world, so as not to knock their heads for an honest and ordinary life. Already drawn into party life, professional networks call on their friends to share the heavy burden of pleasing the state leader. Sergio even recruits factory worker Sal, who is essentially fired from his job as a party organizer. In the evening, the party begins at a long outdoor table. The politicians rejoice at the invitation to join the great girl with all their might, but only Kiri is allowed to sit next to her. Taking advantage of the moment, Sergio sits down closer to discuss future prospects, but Berlusconi asks not to spoil the fun with business conversations. The owner's attention is drawn to the person Stella, the only one of the guests who does not drink or use drugs, but goes to parties at the personal invitation of Sergio in order to acquire useful connections for her director's career. While Berlusconi walked among the guests, choosing a life partner for the coming evening with a lordly air, the organizer refused to speak. The guests rudely wave away the animator in a suit, who, having realized the bitter truth that such beauties do not shine for him, quietly drinks. Kira worries that she is no longer a favorite. Being the equivalent of an expensive status toy, she was faced with the harsh reality that she could easily be replaced with a new, younger one. In the guest bedroom, Stella talks to Berlusconi. The politician, with transparent hints, promises to arrange her future in exchange for intimate attention. However, the lady, who is 50 years younger than him, admits that she is terribly embarrassed by the very thought of intimacy with him. He reminds her of her grandfather and is generally too outdated. Taking a suitcase with things, Stella leaves the party, which upsets the owner, although he does not show it, easing the melancholy in the company of girls with lower social and easier moral principles. Kira tries to fit into the crowd. Although she gains from her status, acquired through years of exposure to high society, she loses purely from age. Berlusconi even throws her a sweater to hide his shame. Serge and Tamara sadly sit on the sidelines, realizing that they will not receive any benefit from this event. They're used like a regular condom once, after which they are easy to discard. They realize that they have made a mistake with their provincial numbers. In the morning, in the butterfly garden, a satisfied Berlusconi watches how the girls are having fun, which is to their liking. While young playboys are relaxing at his villa, businessmen politicians are once again occupying the post of head of state, not hiding a satisfied smile under the flashes of cameras while taking the oath. On the night of April 6, 2009, an earthquake occurred in the city of L'Aquila, one of the strongest in the last 30 years in Italy. More than 15,000 buildings were damaged, about 1,500 people were injured, including fatalities, and 29,000 citizens were left homeless. Berlusconi, together with the government, urgently comes to the site of the tragedy, where he promises to restore new earthquake-resistant houses in place of the destroyed ones. The advisor convinces Berlusconi to speak at the UN Assembly to prove that working in the government is more important to him than partying with young girls. He refuses in front of Tull, especially since he advises him to behave decently, without friendly pats on the shoulder and stupid jokes. Already sitting on the plane, Berlusconi ordered to fly to the place in New York, where the UN meeting was taking place, to Naples. One of his young lovers celebrated her 18th birthday there. On his birthdays, he is greeted as a dear guest. The story ends up in the newspapers, after which Veronica returns from the trip only to get a divorce. She accuses her husband of indulging in his own vice instead of doing something useful for the country. In response, Silvio calls her cold, calculating, leading a dull and measured existence, while he catches everything from life. Her passion for esotericism and creativity is simply an attempt to find at least some meaning. A number of mutual recriminations come down to the question of where Berlusconi himself, proud of having achieved everything from scratch, got the initial capital of £113 billion. The man decides to exercise his right to remain silent. Later, while discussing the trial and attacks by political opponents with an old friend, Silva learns a fun fact from him. All his lovers, whose photographs were published in the magazine, look like Veronica. In response, he tells him about Stella, who touches his soul with her refusal. On the advice of a friend, Berlusconi invites Mike, an old friend and TV show host from his channel, to dinner, who was fired, and Silvio not only did not stand up for him, but did not even call after that. But conversation with him does not restore the calmness of the ruined old man. The sole owner left a cue for the artificial volcano, which he dreamed of showing to guests, but never did. In L'Aquila, residents affected by the earthquake are moving into newly built buildings, as Berlusconi promised. He even sent the old woman the promised false jaw to replace the one lost during the cataclysm. There's a live report on television about how a local landmark, the statue of Jesus Christ, was rescued from the rubble. The film ends with a panorama of the faces of tired rescuers, resting after hard work, much more rewarding and difficult than that of the young playmakers.